A mother's love knows no limits. But what if her love isn't meant to protect you? What if it's meant to control you? You've heard the stories of Shawn Diddy Combs, the success, the fame, the empire. But what if I told you that behind the glitz and glamour lies a darkness most people can't comprehend, a secret rooted in his childhood, in the watchful eyes of his mother, and in the horrors of one night that changed everything? This isn't the Shawn you think you know. This is the boy I grew up with, the friend I watched walk straight into the abyss, a boy who trusted his mother more than anything, until the night she brought him to his first freak-off, a ritual that stripped him of more than just his innocence. What I saw that night still haunts me. The smiles, the chanting, the figure that rose from the shadows. It wasn't just a party, it was a sacrifice. And Shawn was the offering. Are you ready to hear what really happened? Let me take you back to where it all began, to Diddy's first freak-off. Shawn Combs wasn't always the larger-than-life figure you see on magazine covers or hear about on the radio. Back then, to me, he was just Shawn, a skinny, scrappy kid from Mount Vernon, who could run faster and argue louder than anyone I'd ever met. We were inseparable in those days. Two kids navigating a neighborhood that could be as unforgiving as it was alive. But if there was one constant in Shawn's world, it was his mother, Vanessa Combs. Vanessa was the kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a room. It wasn't just her looks, though she was beautiful. Always impeccably dressed, her hair perfectly styled. It was her presence. She carried herself with a confidence that said she could handle whatever life threw her way, and in Mount Vernon that was no small feat. After all, she was raising Shawn and his sister Tawana on her own after the tragedy that had shattered their family. Shawn's father, Maurice Combs, had been killed in a shooting when Shawn was just 2 years old. I remember the first time Shawn told me about it. His voice was low, like he was sharing a secret. He got shot in his car, he said, shrugging, like it was just another fact of life. That was Shawn. He carried his pain quietly, always trying to look tougher than he felt. But even if he didn't talk about it much, you could see the loss in the way he looked at his mom, like she was all the world had left to give him. And Vanessa gave him everything she could. She worked as a model and a teacher's assistant, juggling jobs to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. She was the kind of mom who always showed up, whether it was for Shawn's football games at Mount St. Michael Academy, or just to make sure he stayed out of trouble. "She's my best friend," Shawn would tell me, his chest puffed out with pride. "Nobody's got a mom like mine." Shawn worshipped her. And honestly, I couldn't blame him. Vanessa had a way of making you feel like you were safe, like nothing bad could ever touch you while she was watching. But looking back now, I wonder if that's exactly how she wanted it. The center of the universe when she talked to you. But she wasn't just warm, she was resourceful. I'd seen her talk down angry landlords, charm her way into deals at the corner store, and stand up to anyone who dared cross her or her kids. She was a force of nature, and Shawn idolized her for it. "She's my hero," he told me once, his voice softer than usual. "She's the only person who's ever got my back. She makes me feel like I can do anything." I believed him. When you were around Vanessa, you couldn't help but feel like the world was just a little bit brighter, like things might actually turn out okay. But looking back now, I wonder if that brightness was hiding something darker, a shadow just waiting to creep in. If there was one thing you could count on in Mount Vernon, it was seeing Miss Vanessa Combs somewhere close to Shawn. She was everywhere, like a shadow that stretched just a little too long, always hovering just out of reach. It didn't matter if we were at school, playing football on the neighborhood field, or just walking to the corner store. Vanessa always seemed to know exactly where Shawn was. At first it felt normal, even comforting. But as time went on, I started noticing that her presence wasn't just frequent, it was constant. At school, I'd catch glimpses of her standing near the fence during recess, her sharp eyes scanning the yard until they landed on Shawn. Sometimes, she'd show up during class hours, peering through the window, like she was making sure he was still there. The teachers never said a word about it, almost like they expected her visits. Shawn would wave at her casually, like it was no big deal. But I could never shake the feeling that she wasn't just checking in. In the neighborhood, it was the same story. If Shawn and I were hanging out at the park, it wouldn't be long before I'd spot her sitting on a nearby bench, pretending to read a magazine, but always keeping one eye on us. When we wandered off to grab candy from the corner store, she'd somehow show up again as we walked back, calling out Shawn's name like she just happened to be in the area. At first, we laughed about it. "She's got radar," Shawn joked once. "Knows where I'm at no matter what." But even he couldn't explain how she seemed to know everything we did. everywhere we went. It wasn't just about keeping him out of trouble. She had this way of watching that felt deliberate, like she was studying him. The kind of studying you do when you're expecting something to happen. Not just keeping tabs. Shawn didn't mind it. Or at least he acted like he didn't. He'd shrug off my questions, saying, "She's just being a mom. You don't get it. She's got to make sure I'm good." And maybe that was true. But to me, it started to feel like more than that. There was an intensity in her eyes when she looked at him. A sharpness that went beyond love or pride. It was like she saw something in Shawn that the rest of us couldn't. Something she was waiting for. Sometimes, when she thought no one was looking, I'd catch her watching him with this strange expression, almost like she was both protecting him and expecting him to fulfill some unspoken purpose. I didn't want to say anything, but it started to bother me. It wasn't normal. The way she was always there, always watching. It made me wonder, was it Shawn she was worried about? Or was it something she was afraid might happen to him? Or through him? Even as a kid, I couldn't shake the feeling that her love wasn't just protective. It was purposeful, deliberate, and maybe even a little bit dangerous. It wasn't often that Shawn opened up about his mom. He'd joke about her being overprotective or brag about how she always had his back. But when it came to the deeper stuff, the things that didn't sit right, he usually kept that to himself. Until one afternoon when it all came spilling out. We'd been walking home from school, cutting through the park to avoid the main roads. Shawn had been quiet all day, uncharacteristically distracted, like something was eating at him. Finally, as we sat down on a bench, he broke the silence. "You ever feel like you don't really know someone?" Shawn asked suddenly, his voice low, like you think you know everything about them. And then one day it's like they're a stranger? I frowned, confused by his tone. "What are you talking about?" "My mom," he said, nodding, his eyes fixed on his shoes. "Yeah, I mean, she's my mom. She's everything. But sometimes I feel like there's stuff she doesn't tell me. Stuff I'm not supposed to know." I waited, letting him find the words. Shawn wasn't the type to admit he was scared, not even to me. "There was this one time at church," he began, hesitating. "You know how I help out at the altar sometimes, right?" I nodded. "Well, last week I saw her looking at me from the pews, and she had this look on her face, man. It wasn't proud. It wasn't happy. It was like she was mad or, I don't know, disgusted. That caught me off guard." "Disgusted? Are you sure?" Shawn nodded slowly. "Yeah, like she didn't like seeing me up there or something. But then, as soon as I looked at her, she changed. Gave me this big smile like nothing was wrong." He swallowed hard. "But I know what I saw." I didn't know what to say. The idea of Miss Vanessa looking at Shawn like that didn't make sense. She adored him. Anyone could see that. But the way Shawn said it, I knew he wasn't making it up. "And it's not just that," Shawn continued, his voice dropping even lower. There's stuff she does at night. Weird stuff." I leaned in closer. "What kind of stuff?" He hesitated, glancing around like someone might overhear us. "Sometimes I wake up and she's in the living room. She's got these candles lit, black ones, and there are these symbols drawn on the floor. I don't know what they mean, but they're not normal." My stomach tightened. "And she's saying these words," he went on. "But they're not in English. I don't even think they're words. It's like she's chanting, or something." A chill ran down my spine. "You sure she's not just praying or something?" I asked carefully. "You said she's religious, right?" Shawn shook his head. "It's not like that," he said. "It's not like anything I've ever seen before. He stopped himself, clenching his jaw. "It's like she's talking to something. Like she's trying to, I don't know, talk to something. Or someone." He looked at me then, his eyes wide and uncertain. "And every time I ask her about it, she just says it's nothing. 'Don't worry about it, Shawn,' she says. 'It's just something I do to keep us safe.'" His voice cracked slightly on the last word, betraying the fear he was trying to hide. "I want to believe her," he said quietly. "But man, it doesn't feel like she's keeping us safe. It feels like something else." I didn't know what to say. Miss Vanessa had always seemed so put together, so confident and loving. But the way Shawn described her, it was like she became a completely different person when no one else was looking. "Do you think she's into something bad?" I asked cautiously. Shawn shrugged, running a hand over his face. "I don't know. I don't want to think that. She's my mom. She's all I've got. But sometimes, I just don't know her anymore." For a moment we sat in silence, the weight of his words pressing down on both of us. Finally, Shawn forced a smile and stood up, trying to shake it off. "She's just trying to protect us," he said, his voice uneven. "That's all it is. She's just being a mom. But as he said it, I could tell he didn't believe it. Not entirely. And neither did I. It started with a phone call. Shawn rarely called me after school. We usually just met up somewhere. But that day, his voice sounded different. Quieter than usual, almost cautious. "My mom's having a party tomorrow night," he said. "A special one." I paused, confused. Vanessa's parties were already something else. Loud, extravagant, impossible to ignore. How could one of her parties be special? "What do you mean?" "Special?" I asked. Shawn hesitated. "It's not like her usual ones, I don't know. Different. She told me I could stay downstairs this time. Said I'm old enough to be part of it now." I could hear a mix of pride and uncertainty in his voice. For as long as I'd known Shawn, Vanessa had always kept him out of her parties. He'd peek through the banister or listen from his room, but he was never allowed to join. Now, it sounded like she was finally letting him in, and he didn't know what to make of it. "You want me to come?" I asked, though I wasn't sure why he'd want me there. "Yeah," Shawn said quickly. "It's important. I mean, she didn't exactly say you could come, but just sneak in. It'll be fine." The way he said it made me uneasy, but I agreed anyway. When it came to Shawn, I always did. The next night, I slipped out of my house and headed toward Shawn's place. From the moment I turned onto his street, I could tell something was wrong. Usually, you could hear one of Vanessa's parties from a block away. Music blaring, people laughing, the energy spilling out into the street. But this time, the house was quiet. Too quiet. When I reached the front door, Shawn was already there, waiting for me. He didn't look like himself. His usual easy grin was gone, replaced by a tight, nervous expression. "You made it," he said, forcing a smile. "What's going on?" I asked, glancing at the house. "Where's the music?" Shawn shrugged. "She said this one's more private." He turned toward the door. "Come on," he said softly. "Let's go." Inside, the moment I stepped through the door, I knew this wasn't like any of Vanessa's other parties. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating, like the house itself was holding its breath. The usual warm lighting was gone, replaced by dim candles that cast long, flickering shadows across the walls. And the guests. They weren't dressed in flashy clothes like they usually were. Instead, they wore flowing black robes with deep hoods that obscured their faces. They moved slowly and deliberately, their voices low, murmuring in a language I didn't understand. "Who are these people?" I whispered to Shawn. He shook his head. "I don't know. I've never seen them before." We stood at the edge of the living room, watching as the robed figures gathered, in a circle around a strange symbol, painted on the floor. The symbol glowed faintly, its intricate lines shimmering as if they were alive. "What is this, Shawn?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Shawn looked as uneasy as I felt, but there was something else in his expression, too. Something like pride. "She says I'm ready now," he said. "She says it's time for me to be part of it." "Part of what?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he led me deeper into the house, toward the circle. As we walked, I noticed how the robed figures turned to watch us. Their hooded faces tilted in unison, like they were all sharing the same thought. Vanessa stood at the center of the circle. Her usual confidence was amplified into something almost regal. She looked up as we approached and smiled, but it wasn't the warm, welcoming smile I was used to. It was sharper, colder. "There you are, Shawn," she said, her voice smooth and commanding. "Right on time." Shawn hesitated, glancing back at me. "This is my friend," he said quickly. "He's here to watch." Vanessa's eyes flicked to me. Her smile faded for just a moment before she nodded. "Fine," she said. "Let him watch." Then her gaze returned to Shawn, her expression hardening. "But don't forget," she continued. "While you're here tonight, Shawn, this is important. You have a role to play." Her words sent a chill down my spine. I looked at Shawn, but he was already stepping forward, his shoulders stiff with nervous determination. I stayed where I was, watching as Shawn joined the circle. The air seemed to grow heavier. The flickering candlelight dimmed as the robed figures began to chant in low, rhythmic voices. I wanted to leave, but something kept me rooted to the spot. Curiosity, fear, or maybe the growing sense that whatever was about to happen, it was already too late to stop it. The chanting grew louder, filling the room with a sound that seemed to vibrate in my chest. It wasn't music, but it had a rhythm. Something primal, ancient, and entirely wrong. Shawn stood in the center of the circle now, surrounded by the robed figures as they swayed in unison to the haunting cadence. I remained by the doorway, frozen, unsure whether I should run or stay. And then, he walked in. He wasn't dressed like the others. No black robe, no hood to hide his face. Mr. Gray stood out in every way. His suit was immaculately tailored, but it looked wrong somehow. Too sharp, too precise. Like it didn't belong in this world at all. Too clean, like he didn't belong in this world. He was tall and gaunt, with skin so pale it almost seemed translucent. His cheekbones jutted out sharply, and his eyes, in a cold, steely gray, scanned the room with a detached kind of authority. The moment he stepped inside, the chanting stopped. Every head turned toward him. The robed figures bowed in unison, their movements eerily synchronized. "Shawn," Mr. Gray said, his voice smooth and deliberate, like he was tasting every syllable. "Welcome." Shawn stiffened, his back straightening as he turned to face the man. "Thank you," he said, though his voice wavered slightly. Mr. Gray's lips curled into a thin smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He walked slowly toward Shawn, his movements precise, almost mechanical. For a brief moment, his gaze flicked to me. My stomach dropped. It felt like he was looking straight through me, past my skin and bones, into something deeper, something I didn't even know existed. "And who is this?" he asked. His tone was neutral, but somehow still sharp enough to cut. Shawn hesitated. "He's my friend," he said quickly. "I wanted him to, be here." Mr. Gray's smile widened, and I felt the air grow colder. "A witness," he said softly. "Very well. Perhaps it's better this way." Without another word, he gestured for us to follow him. Shawn moved immediately. I didn't. My legs refused to cooperate. Mr. Gray glanced back at me, raising an eyebrow. "Come along," he said calmly, but his voice carried an undeniable command. I didn't want to go, but something about the way he spoke left no room for argument. My feet moved before I could stop them, carrying me deeper into the house, deeper into whatever this was. The room he led us to was unlike anything I'd ever seen. The air felt thick, heavy with the scent of burning herbs and something metallic. Blood, maybe. The walls were lined with flickering black candles, their flames unnaturally still despite the faint draft brushing against my skin. In the center of the room was a large circle painted on the floor. Its intricate symbols glowed faintly with an eerie, otherworldly light. The lines pulsed gently, almost like they were alive. At the circle's edge stood a pedestal, and on it sat a chalice. It was made of some dark, glossy material that shimmered in the candlelight. It was filled with a thick, dark liquid. The smell of it hit me even from a distance. Sweet and metallic, like overripe fruit mixed with rust. Mr. Gray stepped fully into the room, his presence immediately filling the space. The robed figures followed, taking their places around the circle. Shawn and I were left standing near the doorway, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. "This," Mr. Gray said, gesturing toward the circle, "is a sacred space. Tonight, we honor the one who has given us everything. Tonight, we honor the prince." The room fell deathly silent, the weight of his words pressing down on me like a physical force. "The prince has watched over us," Mr. Gray continued, his voice rising slightly. "He has granted us power, wealth, freedom, and tonight he will accept our gratitude and our offerings." He turned to Shawn, his cold eyes locking onto him. "You," he said, his voice softer now, almost reverent. "You are the one chosen for this honor. Your role tonight is vital." Shawn swallowed hard, his hands twitching nervously at his sides. What do I have to do?" he asked. Mr. Gray's smile returned, thin and sharp. "You will stand in the circle," he said. "You will drink from the chalice, and you will open yourself to the prince. He will see you, and he will know you." Shawn looked back at me, his eyes wide with fear. For a moment I thought he might refuse, might walk away, but then he nodded slowly and stepped forward. The robed figures began to chant again, their voices low and rhythmic. The symbols on the floor pulsed brighter, the light from the circle casting strange, shifting shadows on the walls. As Shawn stepped into the circle, I felt a chill run down my spine. The room seemed to darken, the candle flames dimming as if something were sucking the light out of the air. Mr. Gray turned to me then, his cold gaze piercing through me once more. "You may watch," he said, his voice as smooth as glass. "But do not interfere." I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. All I could do was watch as Shawn knelt before the chalice, his trembling hands reaching for it. The chanting grew louder, more frenzied, the air vibrating with the sound. Then, as Shawn lifted the chalice to his lips, the glow from the circle flared, bathing the room in an unnatural golden light. My stomach churned. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. This was no honor. This was something far darker, far worse, and Shawn was at the center of it. The air in the room became impossibly heavy as Shawn drank. The liquid inside the chalice shimmered unnaturally, as if it were alive. His hands shook as he swallowed, the thick substance clinging to his lips like oil. The chanting reached a fever pitch, the robed figures swaying violently, their movements jerky and inhuman. Then the glow from the circle exploded in intensity, blinding for a moment, before dimming into a sinister, pulsing light. A deep guttural sound echoed from within the circle. It wasn't quite a growl nor a voice. It was something ancient and incomprehensible, resonating in a way that made my bones feel as though they might shatter. And then it emerged. At first it was only a shadow rising from the circle, stretching unnaturally upward. But as the light shifted, the shadow became solid. A figure towered over us, its form almost skeletal, as though blackened flesh had been stretched taut over a frame too large for it. Its limbs were grotesquely long, its arms hanging past its knees, fingers ending in glistening razor-sharp claws. Its head tilted slightly as it rose to its full height, scraping against the ceiling. Its face was almost featureless, a horrifying void, save for one terrible detail: a grin. Its mouth stretched impossibly wide, jagged and cruel, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. It seemed to shimmer in the flickering candlelight. Molten gold eyes burned within its shadowed sockets, scanning the room with an intelligence that felt far too knowing. The creature moved with an eerie grace. Each step was unnervingly fluid. Its massive frame should have made it lumbering and clumsy, but instead it glided, its movements unnaturally smooth and deliberate. The smile never wavered, not for a second, as if it were amused by all of us, by everything it saw. The chanting abruptly stopped. Silence filled the room, so thick it felt alive. The robed figures dropped to their knees in unison, bowing so low their foreheads nearly touched the floor. Their hands reached upward, trembling as they stretched toward the figure like desperate supplicants. And then the degradation began. One by one, the guests began to offer themselves. They crawled forward, their movements pathetic and animalistic, tearing at their robes to expose their flesh. They wept, moaned, and whispered incoherent pleas. Some prostrated themselves at the demon's feet, while others clawed at their own skin, drawing blood in their frenzy to prove their devotion. The creature didn't speak. It didn't need to. Its grin widened ever so slightly, and the golden light in its eyes flickered with what could only be described as pleasure. It raised one elongated hand, its claws gleaming and traced slow, deliberate lines in the air. Then it turned to Shawn. Shawn stood frozen in the circle, his face pale, his lips slightly parted as if he wanted to scream but couldn't. The demon glided toward him, its molten eyes locking onto him with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Shawn trembled, his breath coming in shallow gasps. The creature reached out, its clawed hand moving with agonizing slowness. When it touched Shawn's chest, I expected him to recoil, to cry out, but he didn't. Instead, he stood rigid, as if trapped under a spell. The light from the circle pulsed again. Suddenly, Shawn's body jerked violently. His head snapped back, and his mouth opened in a silent scream, as the golden light in the demon's eyes seemed to flow into him. For a moment, it was as if Shawn's entire body was glowing from the inside out, the light coursing through him, illuminating his veins and bones in a horrifying display. Then, with a flash so bright it burned my vision, the light was gone. Shawn collapsed to the ground, limp and lifeless. His eyes stared blankly ahead, the spark that made him Shawn completely extinguished. The demon tilted its head slightly, as if admiring its work. It straightened, its claws flexing, and turned its gaze to the rest of the room. The robed figures began chanting again, louder, more frenzied than before, their voices filled with a strange, feverish joy. I wanted to run, to scream, to do anything but stand there, but I couldn't move. All I could do was watch as the creature's grin widened even further, as if it were basking in its victory. Its molten eyes scanned the room, and for one horrifying moment they landed on me. The pressure in the air grew unbearable, and I felt something deep in my chest, a pull, as if it were reaching for me too. I stumbled back, breaking whatever trance I'd been in, and realized with sickening certainty that if I stayed any longer, I wouldn't leave this room alive. As the chanting rose to an ear-splitting crescendo, I turned and bolted for the door, leaving Shawn behind. But even as I ran, I could feel that smile, that awful, jagged grin, burning itself into my mind. It wasn't over, not yet. I don't know how I made it into the hallway. My legs moved on instinct, carrying me away from the chanting, the flashing light and Shawn's lifeless body. My mind screamed at me to keep going, to get out of the house, to get as far away as I could. Then I saw her. Vanessa stood at the end of the dim corridor, leaning casually against the wall like she'd been waiting for me. Her face was calm, almost serene, and her lips curled into a small, knowing smile as I approached. You're leaving so soon? She asked, her voice light and conversational, as if we'd just finished a pleasant dinner instead of witnessing the nightmare unfolding. In the other room, I froze, my chest heaving with panic. What the hell is going on in there? I stammered. What did you do to Shawn? Her smile didn't falter. If anything, it widened slightly, as though she were amused by my fear. Shawn's fine, she said smoothly. Better than fine, actually. He's been chosen for something greater. Something you wouldn't understand. Chosen? I repeated, my voice cracking. You call that thing greater? He's dead, Vanessa. You killed him. She sighed softly, shaking her head like a disappointed parent. You're thinking too small. You see a sacrifice. I see an investment. Money, power, freedom, all. The things this world takes from people like us. I did what any good mother would do. Her tone was so matter-of-fact, so confident it made my stomach turn. Shawn didn't ask for this, I shouted, my voice trembling. He trusted you and you— I gave him everything. She interrupted, her voice suddenly sharper. Do you have any idea what it takes to survive in this world? To thrive, money is everything. Power is everything. And this was his chance to have it all. Her gaze softened slightly. And for a moment, there was something almost tender in her expression. He was ready for this. I'm proud of him, she said. Proud to be part of his first experience. His first freak-off. The way she said it, with that strange, unsettling pride, sent a chill down my spine. You're insane, I whispered. Her smile returned, cold and unshakable. No, she said. I'm a mother. I couldn't stay there any longer. I turned and ran, her words echoing in my mind as I stumbled out into the cool night air. I realized then that they weren't just words. They were a warning, a promise, and a curse all at once. Even as I put distance between myself and that house, I knew I'd never truly escape her, or the horrors she'd unleashed. She didn't just create the legend of Diddy, she cursed him with it. And yet, as much as I wanted to hate him, I couldn't. I'd seen the real Shawn once. The boy who idolized his mom and just wanted to make her proud. The boy who cracked jokes, ran faster than anyone, and trusted me to have his back. That Shawn was gone long before the world ever met Diddy. Janice had made sure of that. I turned off the TV, but the images wouldn't leave me. I couldn't stop hearing her voice, calm, chilling. He's been chosen now. I finally understood what she meant. As the story ends, I want to hear from you. Do you think success is always earned, or is it sometimes bought with something far darker? Because once you see the truth, you can never unsee it.